Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Admiral Chris Barrie, and I would like to welcome to the ANU studio this afternoon Admiral Dennis Blair, a colleague of mine from the United States, who has visited Australia on many occasions and worked with us on many issues. Dennis has had a long and illustrious career in the United States Navy over nearly 4 decades. When we worked together, he was the Commander-in-Chief of Pacific Command during the time of East Timor, the Sydney Olympics and other opportunities and things to solve. And more recently finished up in the Obama administration as their first Director of National Intelligence. So good afternoon, Dennis.
Nice to be here, Chris. Thanks.
I've actually got some questions, I guess, that might be of interest to our audience. And the first one, I think, attaches to the question of Australia's relationships with China. There are many Australians, I think, concerned about arguments that Australians ought to choose between the alliance relationship with the United States and our relationships with China. How do you see the events, the threats, the opportunities unfolding over the next 2 decades, and where Australia should place its priorities?
I would think that if we manage it right, Chris, Australia and the other countries in Asia would not have to choose between the United States and China. And certainly, if you listen to the leaders of all 3 of those countries, the United States, China, and of Australia, we share really common objectives of having a secure Asia-Pacific region, a prosperous Asia-Pacific region, and a peaceful Asia-Pacific region. Now, getting from the rhetoric to the reality is what the skill of statecraft and leadership is all about. But I think certainly if you look at the last 50 years, the leaders and the peoples of this region have been able to achieve that balance. And if they're smart about it, I think they can in the future. And I think the keys of it are number one, an approach by all 3 sides of this triangle, the countries in the region, the United States and China, to not make it a zero-sum, if I win, you lose kind of a game, but to realize that there are common benefits that we can all achieve if we recognize them. That means that you can't go for the maximum advantage for your country in one particular issue. You have to leave a little space for everybody to benefit from it. I think that's certainly been the case for the United States and Australia over the years. I think China, on the other hand, feels that it's been held down, has been a victim of others for many years. Now that it's becoming more powerful, it wants to assert its own place. The smart Chinese I know realize that once you become a powerful force within the system, you have a responsibility to uphold that system, not just to suck it dry for your purposes. I think we see some encouraging signs that China may be thinking in those terms. They certainly have dispatched ships to the Gulf of Aden for the International Anti-Piracy Patrol, which is certainly benefiting everyone. We know that China has participated in things like disaster relief around this region and has benefited from the efforts of others when China had its own earthquake here a few years ago. So we see glimmerings of Chinese realization that you have to both contribute to this organization in order to benefit from it. We do see some other signs that China's still thinking perhaps that my gain is your loss. Some of this in the South China Sea, where they've been quite strident about what they're demanding. I think if you look at other places in the region, for instance, in the Gulf of Thailand, where Malaysia and Thailand had disputed territory, they agreed to drill a well, share the profits 50-50, and everybody was able to benefit, and they took the sovereignty question and pushed it off to the future.
We saw a few years ago the Chinese signed the ASEAN Treaty of Amity and Cooperation, and in a sense, at the last meeting in Cambodia, played a very opposite sort of strategy of trying to monster ASEAN countries. This yin and yang approach
Yes.
to trying to assert influence and power in the region. I mean, that does provide a few concerns for people.
And I think they're very justified concerns. When you talk to different Chinese officials, you get different views. Some of them are very aggressive, very unilateral. Others have more of a balanced sense, and I think that some parts of that Chinese attitude are more apparent at some times than in others. Back in 2002, China signed the Code of Conduct for the South China Sea, which says explicitly that territorial disputes will be decided by diplomatic means, and we've seen China walking away from that recently. I think we also have to look at China's internal development in this case, because to my mind, the way a government treats its own people is an indicator of how it will deal with other countries. And again, in China's case, you see pretty tight controls over its citizens. You see sometimes a fairly enlightened approach, as we saw in the village of Wuhan down in the south recently, in which citizens protested, and the district government took that into account and found those were legitimate griefs and dealt with them. We see other cases in which China clearly is much more repressive with its citizens than it should be, and so I think the people of the region are right to look at China and say, which kind of a China are we going to deal with? One which thinks that there are common grounds, or one that thinks that China's big, therefore it should have the say.
Part of the slow liberalisation, I suppose, in China, and lifting millions of people out of poverty, conditions are changing in China. And I remember being told by a young Chinese woman when we were working professionally together that what you have to remember is things are going to change around here, and the old leadership, the people who marched with Mao, they're going to disappear, and there'll be a new leadership in China. And I think we are seeing some of those sorts of changes enacted, but there have got to be questions about an ability to ride this tiger successfully, I would have thought.
I think that's true, and I think that something that China has to deal with is sort of an ultranationalism that one often sees in developing countries, especially ones that feel that they have been oppressed by outsiders for years. But I think the virulence of sort of Chinese nationalism, as expressed often on blog sites and in the internet and all, is something that both Chinese leaders themselves and the rest of the region has to worry about, because I think other countries have learned that you can be proud of your country without feeling that your country has to be acknowledged as number one by everybody else, and it has to take a place. But I sense a certain sort of immature ultra-nationalism in some sectors in China that I think is dangerous.
And I think, just to finish off this part of the discussion, there's always questions about the People's Liberation Army and how that is still playing a role in China. I mean, during my visits and at pretty high level in the Central Military Commission, there were processes and procedures for how armed forces would be used. There were some pretty strange sorts of ways of getting things done, and some interesting terms. But broadly speaking, in my last visit to China, I just get the impression that somehow or another the PLA has become a sort of sideshow to general community concerns and general community interests in getting ahead. And I wonder about the recruits they're now getting, whether they're good quality or whether actually the best in the family are doing commerce and making money and being entrepreneurs, and whether the others are joining military. I mean, have you got any concerns about the PLA and where it stands?
I certainly do. I share your impression that joining the PLA is not the first choice of the best and the brightest of China, whereas I think in the United States and in Australia, the military profession is a respected profession that has a lot of very fine people joining it. So that's sort of one. As you know, the Chinese education system for their officers is literally very provincial, a closed system in which people don't get out of China until they are quite senior. Recently, there's been a program for a sort of a Reserve Officer Training Corps equivalent, the way we have in the United States, to train officers in civilian universities. So I think there's hope that the PLA can become a little more broad-minded in its attitude, but now I think it's quite narrow. I don't think it's getting the really top cut of resources, and I don't think that it is integrated with the rest of the Chinese security decision-making procedure in an integrated way. So you don't see the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Defense, the uniformed military leadership, and other organizations who are used to operating smoothly to try to get an overall policy towards China. You see more a military dimension, a diplomatic dimension, an economic dimension.
Actually, while we're on China, and I think this probably attaches to the second question on my list, and particularly in your recent position as the Director of National Intelligence, cybersecurity issues are becoming a critical feature of our interconnected world. I worry about the extent of our vulnerabilities in the commercial, government and academic worlds. And yet, we don't seem to be placing sufficient priority on managing these security issues. What is your take on the threats and the opportunities and how well we're doing, and particularly in being able to deal with the sorts of vulnerabilities that our systems are exposing us to?
I agree with the import of your question that cybersecurity action is not as much as it should be. There's certainly lots of horror stories. In fact, virtually every week there's news that some reputable company has been hacked, and whether it's an internet giant like Google who was penetrated, or whether it's even a security company like RSA, which in our country, on whose products many of us relied for security, found out that it was penetrated. So right now there's a lot of anecdotal evidence that this is a real danger. I think what's lacking is a real understood approach to how you can go about protecting yourself. And many people think that just putting in a firewall and updating it every so often will do it. For a company network, that's insufficient. You have to have an active sort of defense, as well as simply setting up firewalls to do it. You have to really classify the equipment or the information within your company. What is the stuff that really is the crown jewels of my company that makes a difference on whether I make a profit and survive as a company or not, and treat that differently from routine emails back and forth between executives. And very few companies have figured that out. So I think what's happened is the obvious advantages of using the internet that we all feel in our personal lives and in business lives, the convenience, the instantaneous access, the ability to network and all, are so attractive that we just sort of throw that equipment in, and we haven't realized that the vulnerabilities that come along with it will take even, in fact, more effort, resources, smart people than simply hooking up some new net. And when we realize that, I think our overall level of toughness will go up, vulnerabilities will go down, and some companies and some government organizations, but even in government organizations in my country that are supposed to be thinking about this, we had the WikiLeaks disaster with an insider who was disgruntled and was downloading stuff, and we had not put in the protective systems, which existed, by the way. They just hadn't been put there, which would have identified him and stopped that earlier. So emphasis, resources have to be there.
And I remember reading not that long ago about one of the great weaknesses, of course, of the chief executives and the senior leadership that have the homegrown passwords, which are really easy to crack, and if you just get a hold of their laptop, you got the secret to the whole organisation.
You do.
That's got to be a serious weakness. But cyber attack, Are these Chinese based, right? I mean, are they our own people, or are these state-sponsored attacks?
Right. There are really two levels of, or two organizations that have high technical capability and motive to attack. One is criminal. That's primarily for profit, and there have been some pretty breathtaking criminal schemes, which have many of them international in their focus. ATM codes being stolen, accounts being cleared out in 20 other countries immediately. There are extortion rings in which a criminal organization will go to a company that relies on web-based sales and so on and say, you have to pay us several $100,000 or else we will do a denial of service attack on your website, and you'll lose X thousand dollars an hour because no one will be able to order from you. So there's that category of stuff. And I think the prospects for international cooperation in that area are pretty good. In fact, we have seen police organizations across the United States. We work well with our countries that we have traditional relationships, but we've even seen our FBI in the United States and the Russian security services working against criminal organizations together. So I think that's an area of consensus. Where it gets difficult is at the state-sponsored level of hacking. It's used for gathering intelligence. It's used for industrial espionage to steal secrets. And yes, China is a country which is very active on both of those fronts, both cyber espionage and industrial cyber espionage. On the former, I think that all countries will maintain a national right to try to gather intelligence on others, and that is something that we'll just all have to deal with. I think on the industrial espionage front is an area in which China stands out as one who violates the rules that the other countries have.
So they break the rules deliberately rather than trying to fall in line with international behavior.
I mean, if you're a Chinese company that is bidding on a project in a third country, you can go to a computer science department in a university and say, I'd like to know what the bids are from the French company and Australian company, and that those university hackers will try to go into those companies and get their bids and show them to you, so you can. I mean, it's that blatant, and there's no penalty for it in China right now, and I believe that China, if it's going to be a part of the international economic community, has got to follow the rules that we all do.
Yeah. Well, now this is my last question, and I guess it's one that I couldn't resist asking, given the timing of this part of the year. But right now we have about 10 weeks to go before the next presidential election in the United States, and the race for the White House is starting to gear up. But many observers worry about the offerings in leadership terms because somehow or another we just seem incapable of dealing with many of the complex issues we're confronting. We're so busy concentrating on the spin we've forgotten the substance. I wonder if you'd care to comment on this perspective and maybe chance your arm on predicting the major impacts of the election campaign and the possible outcome.
I think that the sort of the tactics of electoral politics in our country, at least polling, message forming, attack ads, and so on, have become so sophisticated that they dominate what ought to be a contest of ideas for a candidate putting out both his vision of where our country ought to go and how he intends to get there. This has been a secular trend going across many administrations, but I think what we're seeing now is just about the worst case of it, and the negative ads in which you are simply fundamentally saying, I'm better than this guy, therefore vote for me.
Vote for him, vote for me, I'm better.
Right, are sort of certainly dominating the early stages now. Now, there are real issues in the American election that are at play, and I think that President Obama and Governor Romney do have different ideas about the role of government, the size of government, that are legitimate points. And my hope is that in the fall, in the debates, of which there will be three, if if the pressure from both the press and the public is to tell us really what you are going to do if we
Yeah.
give you our vote, we can have a election that we would be proud of, and also it is a leadership issue. The people in charge need to rise above the tactical gurus who advise them and say, I've got to stand for something, and I'm going to stand or fall on whether the American people want to buy it or buy what my opponent stands for. And you know, we sort of lurch in one direction, and then hopefully there'll be a countervailing force, and I'm hoping that it's time to move back in a more positive direction.
I guess a barometer will be voter turnout. I mean, if voters aren't interested in what's on offer, they won't turn out. If, on the other hand, they can excite the issues and
Right.
get some serious debate going, potentially voters will turn out. So that'll be an interesting outcome to watch on in November. Dennis Blair, thank you for spending the time with me, and I hope the rest of your visit to Australia goes as well as the previous 2 days.
Okay,
Thank you
well,
very much.
All right, Chris. Good to be here.